Good evening and happy Sabbath. Welcome to our prophecy seminar. And thank you for joining us once again. And tonight, I'm going to discuss on the sign of God's new world. So this morning we discuss the sign of the new world order, which is the mark of the beast. That is Sunday observance in force. In contrast, God has a sign for a new world. Now let us take some definitions of or synonymous terms that are being used for sign, seal, or mark. Here we go. In Genesis chapter 17, verse 11, "And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you." So circumcision is a token between God and Abraham and Israel. Now in Romans chapter 4, verse 11, speaking of the same circumcision, the Apostle Paul says here in Romans 4, verse 11, "And he received the sign of circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the faith, which he had yet being uncircumcised." So Paul mentioned about circumcision as a sign or seal. Okay, so token or sign or seal are the same thing. And here we go another in Revelation chapter 7, verse 3. The seal is equals to mark. Revelation 7, verse 3, "Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor any trees. There we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads." And this is the same seal that was put in the foreheads mentioned in Ezekiel chapter 9 and verse 4. So token, sign or seal, and mark are terms that are being used synonymously. So the mark, as literally used, signified that a person receiving it was the servant of, acknowledge the authority of, profess allegiance to the person whose mark he bore. And so the mark of the beast or of the papacy must be some act or profession by which the authority of the power is acknowledged. And what is it? What is that? We discussed already this morning and the previous and last week about the mark of the beast, which is Sunday law in force. In Revelation 12, verse 17, "And the dragon was enraged or wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus." So the dragon was enraged with the woman. Whose woman? The woman that was clothed in the sun, and under her feet is the moon. And this woman is keeping the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. And this is the reason why the dragon was wrought with this woman. So then, the mark of the beast must be something that goes contrary to the commandments of God. The Ten Commandments, right? So against the Ten Commandments is the mark of the beast. It is also evident that in the providence of God, the line of separation between the worshippers of the beast and his image on one hand and those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus on the other will be more distinct and visible. There will be only two classes of people in the last days. One who receive the mark of the beast, and the other is those who receive the seal of God. Today, although there are many who observe Sunday, they go to church on Sunday and worship God on Sunday, yet they are not receiving the mark of the beast, because Sunday observance today, in our day, is not yet the mark of the beast. In order for it to become a mark of the beast, it should be enforced by civil authority. In the Revelation, we have three angels' messages: the first, the second, and the third. Now, the message of the third angel is this: the third angel's proclamation will prepare the people of God for the coming crisis. So this is the intent of the third angel's message, to prepare the people of God for the coming crisis. Sunday law crisis, enforced by the civil authority. That's a crisis. So the third angel's message is preparing his people. And the formation of the image and the reception of the mark will prepare all the various classes of adherents to the beast to receive the vials of the wrath of God, the 7 last plagues. So repeat again. The third angel's message prepared the people for the coming crisis. And while the image of the beast and the reception of the mark of the beast prepares all the adherents or the supporter of the beast to receive the 7 last plagues, the wrath of God. So the image of the beast, as we have seen, is made up of apostate religious bodies. We learn about the convention in 1900 this morning of the Federation of Churches, organized in 1900 in the United States, and this Federation of Churches became the National Council of Churches, and they expounded and become the International Council of Churches. So the mark will determine to which class each individual belongs. So either you receive the mark of God or the mark of the beast. Now here is the third angel. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand." So the mark is put into the forehead. And the hands will only follow what the mind dictates. Right? So the third angel is putting the mark in the foreheads. And if any man will receive the mark of the beast in his forehead or in his arm, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. There will be consequences of receiving the mark of the beast, as being warned by the third angel. And since those who keep God's commandments are thus placed in contrast with those that worship the beast and his image and receive his mark, it follows that the keeping of God's law on one hand and its violation on the other will make the distinction between the worshippers of God and the worshippers of the beast. The thing is, Satan doesn't need to tempt you to transgress the whole of the 10 Commandments. Just transgress one precept and you transgress the whole. And we have already seen that the conflict is between the commandments of God and the requirements of the beast, and that a papal institution which has usurped the place of one of the commandments of God is yet to be made a test by the two-horned beast. So take note of this expression here, is yet to be made, is yet to be made. So it's not a test right now. It is yet to be made by the two-horned beast. In the future, we do not know when, but in the future. We do not know how long, but it will come. And it is not difficult, therefore, to see how men will be made to worship the beast. Whenever they obey the requirements of the beast, in the place of the commandments of God, they worship the beast. For they acknowledge him as above the Most High. So if you worship the beast, if you receive and comply with the requirements of the beast, then that is an acknowledgement that this authority is above the Most High. Yeah. So whenever they obey the requirements of the beast, you acknowledge that as above the Most High. And it is a remarkable fact that the pagan festival of Sunday, which is the great apostasy has substituted for the Sabbath of the Bible, is now enforced by the law in most of the states of the Union. There are what we call blue laws in different states. It is not a federal laws, but there are states that, support Sunday. It could be some of them in Europe. In Nepal, the government is actually supporting Saturday as the rest day. So if you work on Saturday, you will receive a fine. But we do not want to worship God because the government backed it up. And in fact, God will not force us to worship him. Yes, he wants us to worship him, but he will not force you to worship him. So our worship is we worship God because we acknowledge it by the heart that he is our God, not because somebody forced you to do that. And a papal institution which directly contradicts the fourth commandments is thus enforced by a Protestant government. Strange, right? Protestant, they protest against the Roman Catholic, the abuse of the Roman Catholic. And yet, they will be the one to enforce the mark of the beast, the mark of the papacy. See, enforced by a Protestant government. Now, what is a sealing work? Now, let us turn to Revelation chapter 7 and verse 1. So there is a picture of 4 angels in Revelation 7:1, 2, and 3. And verse 1, and after these things I saw 4 angels standing in the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. So we have here angels are holding the winds of destruction. And in other words, they are holding the 4 winds, and at the same time they are to release the same wind. And when they are about to release the winds, in verse 2, what is another figure that appear? In verse 2, and I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea. hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. So you see, the work of the four angels is to release the winds of strife and commotion. But it was restrained. Why? Because of the sealing angel in Revelation. The sealing angel was sent by God to restrain, to command that the four angels to hold the winds of destruction. So the same force that these four angels exert to hold the wind is the same amount of force that they will exercise when they are going to release the winds of destruction. So you see the exact opposite of the situation then. So the seal comes from the Greek spragis. That means a signet as fencing in or protecting from misappropriation. By implication, the stamp impressed as a mark of privacy or genuineness, that is seal. And also an instrument or device used for making an impression upon some plastic substance as wax or a wafer. Also the impression made. The wax, wafer, or similar token affixed to a document as a proof of authenticity, also an impression, scroll, or mark on the paper. Now the seal is to protect us from all evil. Now this read here. This action of sealing with a seal or signet of God is equivalent to a declaration that they who are so sealed appertain to God and are distinguished as such from others who do not thus belong to Him, and are assured by Him of His protection against evil. So this is protection from all evil. So when God sent us a message, and we accept that message and work out in harmony with the message, God will put His seal of protection, His seal of approval upon us. So the seal is upon those whom the Lord knows that are His. That is in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 19. Nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are His, and let everyone that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity. So God knows who are His. So you see the branding of cow, sheep, some of them on the nose, some of them in the ears. Some of the most painful are, on the iron, and mark them on the skin. But nevertheless, the same thing that is being implied, that they belong to somebody else. Okay, that's mine. That's mine. You are mine. You are His. I am God's. I belong to Him. So that is implying that we are God's property. God is building a noble castle or a spiritual house, and His people are the living stones that form that house, each stone bearing the seal of ownership. And it is common in ancient times. You who accept the message of truth and live in harmony with it are considered building blocks or stones, and your name is inscribed in them. The name of God is also inscribed. You belong to God. Among the ruins of the ancient city of Babylon are bricks stamped with the name of the builder, King Nebuchadnezzar. So we, by the grace of God, are stones in the house of God, and we bear His name or the mark of His ownership. So all of us symbolized by the bricks, each of us. And each of us has a place in the completion of the building. So angels holding the four winds. So these angels standing on the four corners of the earth are at the cardinal points of the earth, restraining or holding back the winds. And we know the meaning of winds. They mean commotions among the nations, wars, political movements, strife. So COVID-19 is a political movement because it was, it was decided by the rulers or by the rulers of the nations. The global pandemic. It is a political movement, so it is under the bracket of the term winds. And we have experienced that for 2 years. Those, gushing of wind and shock us for 2 years. In Testimonies to Ministers 444, if such sins as these are to come, in other words, when the winds of destruction will be released, if that sin are to come, such tremendous judgment on a guilty world, where will be the refuge for God's people? Where will be God's people then? Hiding if the judgment of God will fall. What is their protection? How will they be sheltered until the indignation be overpassed? How? John sees the elements of nature, earthquake, tempest, and political strife, represented as being held by the four angels. And these winds are under the control until God gives the word to let them go, release them. Until then, there is safety for God's church. So while the angels are holding the four winds of destructions, there is safety for God's church. So you see, we have a taste for 2 years, the pandemic, for example. And this month, September 26th of this month, New Zealand, the restriction will be removed. So in other words, God's still holding the winds. He's still in control. The angels of God do his bidding, holding back the winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree, until the servants of God should be sealed in their foreheads. So you see, in the previous subjects that we discussed, in Daniel 7, there are four winds that strove upon the great sea. And then in Revelation, God commanded that this wind should be held so that it will not blow on the earth, because they are representing destructions, commotions. So the setting of Revelation chapter 7 is that the time during which the winds are held could not, from the nature of the case, be a time of profound peace. In other words, there was a trouble. There was a commotion when this wind was being held by the four angels. Because if we say that they are in the time of profound peace, that will not answer the prophecy. For in order to make it manifest that the winds are being held, there must be disturbance, agitation, anger, and jealousy among the nations, with an occasional outburst of strife, like a fitful gust breaking away from imprisoned and struggling tempest. And this outburst must be suddenly and unexpectedly checked, so that the four angels are actually being commanded to check the progress of these winds. So then, but not otherwise, it would be evident to him who look at events in the light of prophecy, that for some good purpose, look at it, there must be some good purpose why God restrained these winds of destruction. For some good purpose, the restraining hands of an all-powerful ruler was laid upon the surging elements of strife and war. Yeah, for some good purpose. And the Bible said, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. Now let us take, for example, some historical events that this prophecy could be applied to, commencing with the Great Revolution of 1848, when so many European thrones toppled into the dust. What a state of anger and political unrest that has existed among all the nations of the earth. New and looked for complications have suddenly sprung up, throwing matters into apparently inextricable confusion and threatening immediate and direful war. So that is a great revolution in European nations. And that answers to the prophecy in Daniel chapter 2. The toes combined with clay and iron. They will not unite. These European nations will not unite. They will always be at war. And now and then, the conflict has burst forth into fury, and 1,000 voices had been raised to predict that a great crisis had come, that universal war must result, and the termination no man could foretell, when suddenly and unaccountably it had been extinguished and all subsided into quiet again. You know, like it will burst and then quiet again. Sudden. So you see, we can see here that God still intervenes in the affairs of the nations. So we might think that, like for example, World War I. So it took place and then stopped. There was a period of peace. Then came World War II. And it stopped. And there was a period of peace. And people are talking and looking forward that there will be World War III. So similar to that, there was a burst of fury and then extinguished and subsided into quietness. Another example, so from Europe to the United States. In our own land, the United States of America, the terrible Civil War of 1861 to 1865 is a notable instance. By the spring of the latter year, at that time, Abraham Lincoln was the president of the United States. And by the spring of the latter year, so great had become the pressure upon the nation for men and means to continue the war, that it began seriously to impede the progress of the work symbolized by the ascending angel, even threatening to arrest it entirely. So you see, the civil war in the United States, well, to our human point of view, will hinder the progress of the work of that ascending angel. And those interested in these truths, believing that the time had come for the application of the prophecy, and that the words of the angel hurt not the earth, nor on the sea. So hurt not. These words of the angels indicated a movement on the part of the church. Accordingly, raised their petitions to the ruler of the nations to restrain the cruel work of tumult and war. So the church has something to do in this crisis. And always in every crisis, the church has something to do. But not saying that we have to wait for the crisis, to come, then we act. Evidently, when there's a crisis, there's a work for the church to do. And what is that? To pray. Days of fasting and prayer were set apart for this purpose. The time at which this occurred was a dark and gloomy period of the war. And not a few high in political life predicted its indefinite continuance and an appalling intensity of all its evil. So even politicians predicted that this war will never stop, gonna continue indefinitely. But according to the vision, of Ellen G. White, something happens. And this is what happened. But suddenly a change came. And not 3 months had elapsed from the time of which we speak, ere the last of the Southern Confederacy had surrendered, and all its soldiers lay down their arms. Just suddenly, the Confederate soldiers just lay down their arms and surrender. According to the vision of Ellen White, that she saw an angel just wave his hand, and all the army just scattered. So in that vision, so we can see here that God's hand is still in control. And so sudden and entire was the collapse, and so grateful were all hearts for relief from the pressure of the terrible strife. Everybody praised the Lord. Everyone must be happy. The church must be so happy as well, because God hears their prayers. The nation broke forth into a song of jubilee, and these words were conspicuously displayed at the national capital. This is the Lord's doing, it is marvelous in our eyes. So it was put in a caption in the capital of the United Nations, of the United States. This is the Lord's doing, because no one really can explain to the fullest or satisfactorily the reason why the war just terminated. It is the Lord's doing, it is marvelous in our eyes. There are those who believe there was a definite cause, of course, for the sudden cessation of the strife, of which, of course, the world is but little aware. The world only aware little about why. But who knows most? It was the church. And even it is revealed in the spirit of prophecy, the reason why it ceased. The sudden conclusion of the Franco-German War of 1870, of the war between Turkey and Russia, 1877 and 1878, the Spanish-American War in 1896. I remember in our Philippine history that there was a battle in Manila Bay between Spanish and American troops. That includes the Filipinos. And it ended up in the signing of the Treaty of Paris. And the recent war between Russia and Japan can be cited as later examples. So God here shows that He is in control. He holds the winds of strife. And what is the importance of the seal in the law? By the way, where do we find the seal of God? Yes, in the fourth commandment. Okay, if you read the fourth commandment, if you read the 10 commandments, and the fourth, you will notice that God put more words on the fourth commandment. You try to count, word count. So the fourth commandment contains many words compared to the other of the commandments. And God's seal contains three elements. First, His name, the Lord your God, not the title, Creator, and the territory, heaven and earth. So that's the content of the seal, basically, the seal. Now, take for example, let us take away this command. Let us take the fourth commandment. Take away this command from the Decalogue. So 9, it leave us 9. So if you take the fourth commandment, you take the seal. And God's right to rule rests in the fourth commandment. Yes, God's right to rule rests in the fourth commandment. And if you take the fourth commandment, then you take God's right to rule. And the seal will be placed in the foreheads of those who does know God. So the seal is being put into the foreheads of those who knows God. And if we take the seal, what's going to happen? What can be put in the foreheads? Nothing. So we take the fourth and the first three commandments. The first one, thou shalt not have, I am the Lord thy God that brought thee out of the land of Egypt. Thou shalt not have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images and bow down to them. Yeah, that is the second commandment. And thou shalt not take the name of your God in vain. So that is the first three commandments. And it mentioned the word God. But we cannot tell from this who is meant, who's the God it is referring to. Because the first three commandments does not define who is that God. And in fact, the Bible says that, for there are multitudes of objects to which this name is applied to. There are gods many and lords many. In Apostles, 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 5. So you see, the word God and lords can be applied to anyone or anything. And if we pass over the fourth commandment for the meantime, the fifth contains the words Lord and God. Yes. What is the fifth commandment? Honor thy father and thy mother. And then there is that you will live long in the land that the Lord thy God giveth you. So this is the commandment with a promise. So honor thy father and thy mother. And the rest contains the word God and Lord. But in the fifth commandment, the Lord and the words Lord and God does not define them. Okay, the fifth commandment does not define them. And the remaining 5 precepts do not contain the name of God at all. Now, what shall be done then? What shall be done? And with that portion of the law which we have examined, it would be impossible to convict the grossest idolater of sin. The worshipper of images could say, this idol before me is my God. See, this thing that I made with my hands, this is my God. And these are his precepts. The 9. That is without the fourth commandment. So his name is God, and these are his precepts. And the worshippers of the heavenly bodies could say as well, well, the sun, the moon, the stars is my God, and I worship him according to this law. Thus, without the fourth commandment, the Decalogue is null and void, so far as it pertains to enforcing the worship of the true God. Now let us put back, here we go. So let us put back the fourth commandment, restore to the law this precept, which many are ready to contend that has been expiated. But anyway, the fourth commandment actually has been controverted these days, that it has been expiated or made a null and void because of Christ's death on the cross. But let us restore that to its proper place and see how the case will stand then. And as we examine this commandment, which contains the declaration, what is declared in the fourth commandment? For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and the sea and all that in them is, so forth. We see at once that we are reading the requirements of him who created all things. So we have here, the fourth commandment defines the person that demands something. He is what? He's the one that creates us. He's the creator. And also became our Redeemer, Savior. So we see here, the fourth commandment defines who is that person that demands worship. The sun then, the stars and the moon, is not the God of the Decalogue. The true God is he who made the sun, the stars, and the moon. No object in heaven or earth is the being who here demands obedience. So you see, the sun, it is not the sun, it is not the moon and the stars that demands obedience. It is he who made the heavens and the earth and all that in them is. For the God of this law is the one who made all created things. The God that we worship is the creator. And now we have a weapon against idolatry. Now this law can no longer be applied to false gods. False gods, those are the gods, known gods, or so-called gods who have not made the heavens and the earth, according to Jeremiah chapter 10 and 11. But instead, man made them, not them that made these created things. Now, the author of this law has declared who he is, the extent of his dominion, and the right to rule. For every created intelligence must at once assent that he who is the creator of all has the right to demand obedience from all his creatures. So God demands obedience from everyone whom he created. But think one thing, that he will never force you to worship him. But as a creator, he has the right to demand obedience because we are created and he created everything in the universe. So for example, you have here this paper. Let us make an airplane. I just do it like this. So let us take, for example, this is the airplane that I make, paper plane. So I play with this, I make this, I play with this, and I have the right also, because I am the one that I have also the right to destroy that. There's a song that he can create and he can destroy. So that is the prerogative of the Creator, of God. He can create and he can destroy. He has the right to demand obedience from all his creatures, but he never forced anyone. And in Revelation chapter 4, verse 11, it says here, "Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive" what? And let us read, "Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created." So what is the reason we worship God? Because he created you. The reason we came to the church to worship God is not to show off our new shoes, new suit, brand new cars. No, that is not the motive. It is not to be seen and to see. But of course, a fellowship is good, yeah, to see one another. But that is not the motive of our worship. We worship him because he created us. Let us remember that. Let us put that in mind. Every time we come to the church, we come here to worship the one who created us. So thus, with the fourth commandment in its place, this wonderful document, the Decalogue, the only document among men which God ever wrote with his own finger, has a signature. Now, in the days of Moses, hieroglyphics is a well-known way of writings. And they use clay tablets or stone to write or inscribe. So God wrote his commandments in a stone. Why? Why God did not use any other material like papyrus to write the 10 Commandments? Why he wrote that on stone? Because so that no one can forge, no one can delete. In paper, on papyrus, it can be burned. Could you imagine in those times if the Bible is written in clay tablets, there will be heaps of clay tablets. So the finger of God wrote the 10 Commandments, and it has a signature. It has that which render it intelligible and authentic. It has a seal. But without the fourth commandment, it lacks all these things. So that's how important is the fourth commandment. So we see here that the Sabbath is the greatest question. It is the line of demarcation between the loyal and true and the disloyal and transgressor. It is the seal of the living God. The Sabbath of the fourth commandment is the seal of the living God. So with this knowledge, brethren, so you see, the seventh day Sabbath is the seal of the living God. But many of the people nowadays are worshiping God sincerely on the first day of the week, and God accepts their sincerity of purpose. But when the light comes to them, and if they reject that, of course, as of now, they will not receive the seal or the mark of the beast, because it is yet to be enforced by the two-horned beast. But by doing so, they are preparing themselves, by rejecting the truth and keeping Sunday instead of the Sabbath, seventh-day Sabbath. They are preparing to receive the mark of the beast. As yet today, they are no one received yet the mark of the beast. But if they knew the truth and they set aside the truth about the Sabbath, then they are preparing to receive the mark of the beast. Now the question is, the four angels are holding the four winds that a special work may be accomplished. So the four angels are holding the winds of commotions and strife, so that the work, a special work, will be accomplished. That is the sealing of God's people. The saints of God are to be sealed in their foreheads. That's a special work that is going on. The question is, brethren, how long before you be ready for the seal of God? How long? You need a little more time? No one can determine, but how long, brethren? These are questions. This is one of the questions that you need to answer by yourself. So how long before you will be ready for the seal of God? And if you have known the truth about the Sabbath as the seal of the living God, in contrast with Sunday, which will you choose? Today we make a choice. We accept the seventh day as the Sabbath. And in the future, we will also make a final decision. So which will you choose? And it's up for you to answer for that. Each of us has to make their own decision. But let us pray that all of us, that our choices will be in harmony with God's will and with His commandments. This is my prayer to all of us tonight, and may the Lord bless you. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, the final presentation would be A New World at 6 o'clock. So we'll see you there, and thank you for joining us tonight. God bless you all. Thank you. Amen.